How do you know if your spouse is considering cheating? Have you ever considered cheating? Have you considered an affair? Are you considering an affair? Why do people contemplate, consider? People think about affairs. They don't just jump into affairs. Most people don't just stumble into infidelity. They contemplate it. They think about it. They weigh the decision. When you're married, you have a tie, you have a connection. You have something, usually, typically, that bonds you together. And yet you can be married and be contemplating cheating. What is that all about? This video today is for those of you who have suspected that your spouse might be ready to cheat on you, or that they may be cheating. Or maybe you're the person, this video may be for you, who is considering cheating. And you're trying to figure out, should I do it? Should I not? Why do I feel this way? Why do I feel drawn to this other person and not drawn to my spouse? What is going on with me? In this video, I want to share with you what I believe is the number one reason why most people have an affair. What takes people over the edge into the complexity of infidelity. I'm Rod Harrison. I'm a relationships expert and marriage coach. If I haven't met you before, welcome to the channel. Let's jump into some spicy stuff for today's video. All right, so what is this all about? Let me tell you what it's not about. Let me tell you the reasons people don't consider affairs. Did I say that the right way? What the issue isn't. The issue isn't that you're somehow not a good person. Maybe you're not a good person, but just work with me. From my perspective, and probably from most perspectives, like I'm saying that people who cheat, people who have affairs are not always bad people. They're not like just corrupt morally. It's not just that they don't care. I've seen great, amazing, conscientious, God-fearing, church-going, people who love their wives, their children, their families, have affairs. So it's not necessarily that it's not good people. We've seen this across the world of sports and business. Y'all remember the whole affair up in the Boston area? I don't think they were bad people. And in my experience, it's not because it's bad people. It's not because somebody just swept them off their feet. It's not that people just get swept off their feet overnight. It's really not terribly realistic unless something's very serious going on the inside, that you just get swept up overnight. Something happened. I don't even know how I got here. I don't even know how I ended up in this affair. It usually doesn't happen that way. I've been working with couples for a long time, and I've seen affairs happen. I've seen the patterns. I know how it goes. It's usually not, a one-night stand that nobody saw coming. It's not that they're just looking for a new adventure. It's not that people just, I'm just out for a new adventure. I just woke up this morning and decided I need a new adventure in my life, so I'm going to go and have an affair. Let me find somebody to have an affair with. Let me check with one of my coworkers. Let me check with somebody down at the local bar. It's really not that. It's not how it goes. We're not built that way normally. Now, some people act in those ways, but something happens on the inside before they behave that way on the outside. It's not necessarily that the person who's contemplating an affair or has had an affair, has cheated, is some sort of psychopath who's addicted. And there are some psychopathic people who are very addicted to sex and to pornography and all the like. That's not this video. We'll get to that one another time. That's not the reason. It could be a reason, but it's usually not the reason. Certainly not the number one reason. It's not even necessarily money problems, though money problems are real in marriages. People get fed up about the money and they start looking for security somewhere else. I was just talking to a lady the other day. She said, my husband left me for my best friend. I said, what? Your husband left you for your best friend. How did your best friend explain that to you if your best friend explained that to you? Of course, her best friend didn't explain it to her, but eventually they had a conversation. She said, I went with him because of the money. He's a businessman. He's making good money, and she wanted the money, so she cheated on her. Yeah, come on. She stole her best friend's husband, like an affair. So it does happen, but that's it's not uncommon, but it's not the number one reason. The number one reason, in my experience, that people have affairs, and this is why you might be on the verge of an affair, it might be the reason why your spouse is on the verge of an affair. Are you ready? Drum roll. Drum roll. Here it is. I believe, from my experience, that the number one reason people have affairs is because of loneliness. Loneliness. Emotional longing. Emotional aloneness or loneliness. Loneliness is a beast. It's a bear. I was working with one of my couples communities recently, and I asked a question. I said, on a scale of 1 to 10, how many of you have ever been lonely inside of your marriage? Bam, bam. On Zoom, everybody, bam, bam. Hands just flying up, bam, 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 bam. Guess what? It was both men and women. I asked one of the men who raised his hand, I said, so tell me, like, what does loneliness look like for you? How do you experience loneliness? How does it go for you? He said, for me, it's when I'm trying to talk to my wife and share things with her that she's so busy that she doesn't really listen to me. And then she's got to run and do that or run and do this. And then I get cut off, and then we never finish. I never get her feedback. I feel lonely. He says, and I just shut down. And eventually I got to a place where I stopped talking. He said, and that led to an affair in our marriage. Loneliness it can be emotionally debilitating. It can take the life out of your spouse. Is anybody on this video, watching this video, do you know what I'm talking about? Can you just put it in the comments and let me know if this is resonating? If this is up your alley and down your road, like, you know, the loneliness. Is your spouse lonely? Maybe you're not the one about to cheat. You suspect that your spouse is. You've been drifting apart. We'll talk about that later in the video. And you feel like things are just not the same. We're not clicking. We're not connected. And you're suspecting that your spouse may be having an affair or may be on the verge of an affair. And I'm glad you're here, because I want to help you understand what could very possibly be going on. So what does this mean to be emotionally lonely? To be emotionally lonely means you got a spouse or maybe you're that spouse who you don't feel like your spouse is curious about you anymore. They don't seek you out, pursue you, seem to desire you. And you sort of just feel like we're here. And why are we here together? We're like roommates. We're like, busy, co-workers or business partners, I should say. And you're trying to figure out what is going on. But what happens is it's when the other person doesn't seem to be interested in you. And again, it could be when you are not displaying interest in your spouse and they feel alone. There's no more curiosity. You don't display any interest in their desires and what's going on with their life and what their dreams are. And hey, how was your day? Like, we're not even talking about lifelong questions or life questions. We're just talking about everyday things. So when a person is living in an environment where the other person shows no interest, it can foster extraordinary loneliness. Are you still curious about your partner, your spouse? Are you still curious about them? Do you still learn about them? Sherry and I, we were in the closet putting away clothes today. Yeah, I believe it or not, like, I got regular stuff I got to do because I'm a husband, and we're putting away clothes in our closet. And we were talking about how much we love each other and we care about each other. And yes, and sometimes we get irritated with each other. We get on each other's nerves. And so we started having a conversation about, well, what are you irritated about? And, We don't always like to talk about the negative stuff, but I said, it's kind of good if we talk about the negative things because it gives me an opportunity to get to know you, to understand you better. And she shared something with me about her. I'm not going to tell you. She shared it with me, but I said, oh, you know what? I've been watching that recently, and I noticed that that's something you do. It wasn't bad. It was just a way. It's a pattern for her. It's part of how she processes. I said, and I'm glad you said it because I've been observing it, and I'm glad that I can learn how to adjust to that. That's when curiosity happens inside the marriage. Y'all holler at your boy and do not hate on me because I'm still growing and I'm still learning. Are you still growing and still learning? Are you still curious about your spouse? Are they still curious about you? So let's talk about why this emotional loneliness is so very, very, very real. Where does this come from might be a better question. But why is it so real? There is this phenomenon that happens that goes from childhood experiences that then become translated or played out, lived out in our adult lives, especially in our married lives. I like to say to my clients that I work with privately and in our groups, like, hey, what you needed then, you still need now. And the less you got it then, the more you need it now. Did I go too fast? What you needed then, as a child, you need now. And the less you received it then as a child, the more you need it now. So if you needed affirmation then and could never get it, you needed a whole lot inside of your marriage. Oh my goodness, this is getting good. Is this helping anybody? Genesis chapter 2 says it's not good for the man to be alone. It's not just Adam for whom it wasn't good to be alone. It was also Eve, like to be alone, for mankind to be alone is not good. And so the further description of their relationship was that a husband would leave his father and mother and cleave to or cling to his wife. By the way, it's interesting that the leader in this is the man leaving, setting a pattern, and the two will become one flesh. Loneliness is when two don't become one, where they kind of keep feeling like two. Yes, we're supposed to individuate. We're supposed to be individual. We're supposed to have our own uniquenesses. Like Sherry's got things that she loves to do. I got things I love to do. They're not always the same thing. Sometimes we look for common ground. We try to take interest in each other's lives. But when we do that, we become one. Are you tracking with me? So if you're in a marriage and you feel like, yep, it's two. They go their way, I go my way. We get home. Hey, how are you? How was your day? Right? There's no real connection. This is where it comes from. Now, this is born out of when you're, let me not go too fast. But when a spouse doesn't know how to help foster connection, this emotional connection, it's not because they're a bad person. I said that earlier. Oftentimes, most often, it's because they had so little nurture emotionally in their childhood that they don't know how to do it in their adulthood. It's like we get married because we have these ideas and ideals and dreams. All of those are real. All of those are, that's legitimate. That's normal. That's human. But just because I have the will doesn't mean I have the skill. Did I go too fast for you? Let me slow down. Whoop, let me roll that back for you. Just because you got the will doesn't mean you got the skill. Like, I said when I was 8 years old or nine years old, I'm never going to leave my wife and children. I'm going to always be there for them. Because, I grew up in a broken home. My amazing single mom raised me. There was no dad around. I didn't meet him until I was 23, 20, maybe 24, 25, just before I got married to my wife. But I had this will that I'm going to be an amazing husband. I'm going to be there. I'm going to stand in. But I got married and discovered I ain't got the skill. I didn't know how to really care for my wife emotionally. I didn't know how to really connect with her, and I didn't know how to empathize. I didn't know. I was a wreck. So we got to year 9. She was like, I can't do this. Like year 9 was a year from hell for our marriage. Now, we're going on 35 years now, so we figured something out. One, we figured out it helps if you continue working at it. So what makes this so real is that there are these childhood needs that go missing in our lives, and we become adults who get married and we don't have the skills. Like, we got the will, but we don't have the skill. And another couple in one of our groups recently, and as I was describing this, the spouse was just doing like this. Oh, oh, oh. Well, they happen to be one of my private clients also, but in one of my groups. And what I know is that her husband was tagged the angry NFL athlete. He had they call anger issues. And one of the struggles that they've had and worked through and are working through has been his anger, but now it is showing up as sort of disconnect in their marriage. They love each other. They care about each other. They've got a beautiful family. But she was one of those who said, on a scale of 1 to 10, my loneliness quotient is high. And then as I began to describe and explain where this oftentimes arises from, you got a great spouse who's not a bad person, but they don't have the skills, even though they have the will. And it started to register. Is this registering with you? I'm curious. Put it in the comment. Let me know what you're getting. You ever had the will but didn't have the skill? Do you have a spouse who you're like, oh, they had the will but they don't have the skill? And somehow we find ourselves drifting apart. So let's talk a little bit about what this emotional loneliness looks like. Typically, one spouse is very aware how lonely they feel. Like, the lonely person carries the loneliness and the aloneness. They feel it like it's palpable inside of them. They can be eating dinner with their spouse, or they can be lying in bed watching a movie, but they just feel alone. Is anybody out there ever felt the weight, that heaviness of being and feeling alone? Like you don't hate the person, but you just feel like there's something missing. That's kind of what it looks like. That's kind of how it goes. And the other person is just not very available emotionally. It's not that they don't care. It's oftentimes they don't even know. They don't know. You ever had somebody give you something, like give you a gift, and you're like, okay, thank you very much. And you're like, they have no idea who I am. They have no idea. This is not something I would ever use or ask for. That's how it is in your marriage when you feel lonely. It's like the other person just doesn't know you. Like, I had one coach that I worked with years ago, football coach in the NFL, and he gave his wife a beautiful ring, $30,000 ring. That was big money back then. It's not big money now. $30,000 ring. And he was excited to bring it home to her, give it to her. She took the ring and threw it at him. It's like, you can keep the ring. Why do you think I want a $30,000? Why do you think I want another wedding ring? What I would like is to not be lonely, she says. I'm sick and tired of your love affair with your team and with the NFL and with all of your meetings. I'm sick and tired. I'm alone. And she left him. She divorced him. Long story made short, the good story, ending well, they got back together. They're remarried. So I'm telling you, people go through this. So where does it come from? What does it look like? If you got a spouse who works all the time, like they work all the time, or if you're the person who works all the time, like chasing the paper, constantly trying to keep up in your professional life, you could have a spouse who's very lonely and on the verge of an affair, maybe even in an affair. A client, we were working together, and her husband had an affair. And they came to work with me to try to figure out where did this come from and what was happening. And as we got down to it, began to ask them some questions. I took them through what I call my big three. And in the big three framework, a person begins to discover why they were doing what they were doing or what they did. And she said, when I grew up, my parents would always say, no, we can't have that. No, you can't have that. No, we don't have enough money for that. No, don't drink all the milk. Or no, there's no more milk. There's no more milk. No, you guys drink all the milk. She kept hearing that. When she became an adult, she had ingested all that. She began working like overtime, all the time. She said, I now realize I've been trying to buy more milk. Her husband goes, oh my God. This is why. He says, and I've been feeling lonely. You're so busy working, you get meetings after meetings after meetings, you leave early in the morning, you home late at night. She wasn't cheating on him with somebody else, but she kind of had an affair going on with her job, and it left him lonely. So if you work all the time, if you're hiding in hobbies, if you travel all the time, especially if you travel all the time for work, if you're addicted to something, like if you're addicted to alcohol or to drugs, if you're addicted to something, you numb out on it, so you can't be emotionally available to the other person. The other person is lonely. You wouldn't believe the number of couples I work with who are from the professional world, sports, and from business, who are lonely because their spouses are addicted. They're addicted to weed, they're addicted to alcohol, they're addicted, as I mentioned, to work. Addiction is to numb something in our lives. And so we don't know how to show up for other people to help them have connection with us. All right, let me give you a few more. If there's no dating, if there's no meaningful touch, if there's no looking at each other, like when you stop having Google eyes for each other, you're moving in a dangerous direction. That's a space of loneliness. Like you don't sit down, you don't touch hands, you don't. I was in Paris a few years ago with some friends. Sherry didn't go with me on this trip. I took her later on a trip just for us. But I was on my way to Africa. We stopped through Paris. We stopped in a beautiful cafe, and I'm sitting there with the guys, and we're just kind of chopping it up and having, a good meal. And I look over across from me, and there's this couple, and they're sitting there just like this, talking to each other. And I thought, oh, wow. Love in Paris, that's the way it's supposed to be. And that's what keeps us from being lonely, right? When we're not spending time, we're not looking each other in the eyes, when we stop expressing gratitude, it's like the other person starts feeling taken for granted. Maybe you're that person who feels taken for granted. There's never any thank yous. Hey, thank you so much. My wife said to me this morning, we talk, just so y'all know. She goes, did I tell you I love you today? I said, yeah, you did. You sure did. You told me you loved me. She said, how? I said, oh, she goes, oh, I know. I brought you coffee. I said, yep, you brought me coffee earlier this morning. And I said to her, baby, thank you so much. I was exhausted. I'm lying in the bed, sleeping late. She brought me a cup of coffee. She does it almost every morning. I said, you don't realize how much it means to me. And sometimes I feel a little awkward. Like, am I taking, well, how can she keep doing? She goes, it's easy. I do it because I love you and I appreciate you. I appreciate what you do for me, the things you do for me, the things you do for our family. She goes, I do it just because I love you and I appreciate you. I said, I love you and I appreciate you. Thank you. When was the last time you heard thank you from your spouse? Like real thank you, like not this passing, all right, thank you, but this, thank you so much. Thank you for being here for me. Thank you for all you do. Thank you for the way you care. Thank you for the way you show up for me. Thank you when you do this or when you do that. Thank you. I really appreciate it. See, when you don't feel appreciated, you start to feel lonely, taken for granted. And I promise you, there's somebody out there who's going to say thank you at just the right time. And if you will, in just the right way. But it won't be the right way. It'll be harmful to your marriage. All right, this loneliness, I think I mentioned this, but it's kind of a slow ball pattern that takes place. I want to talk about this for a minute because I think it's really important. It's a slow ball pattern. It's like when you get married, like there's exuberance and there's joy and there's excitement, but slowly you begin to do what people often say, we started drifting apart. Can anybody identify with that who's watching? Like we started drifting apart. How did you start drifting apart? Like people say we just started drifting apart. So we just, we don't vibe anymore. We don't really love each other like that anymore. So I went and had an affair, or I'm about to have an affair because we've drifted apart. Drifting has a science to it. The science of drifting begins with loneliness. People who are lonely don't want to run to the scene of the emotional pain. So they start drifting. They start going in another direction. They start moving in a direction where they feel better. That's what we do with pain. So loneliness causes pain, and when you feel alone, you just start going in another direction that something makes you feel. Sometimes people go to work because home is lonely. Sometimes they stay at work because home is lonely. Sometimes people turn to other people because they feel lonely. Sometimes they turn to other things because they feel lonely. Sometimes they turn to their hobbies because they feel lonely. And the drifting apart has scientific reasoning to it. It's called the more you feel alone, the more you don't want to be around the person who makes you feel alone. And so people begin to drift apart. And so let me give you some brutal realities and we're going to land this plane. Well, let's talk about the root of the issue. How about if we just get down to the root of it? Often we think that the person who's leaving the other person lonely is a bad person. They neglect you because they are mean or nasty or whatever. And those things can be true. But so often what's happening is their childhood lack is starting to play out in the marriage. Their childhood lack is starting to play out in the marriage. Remember I said it's not for lack of will, it's for lack of skill. You have to address things at the root so that you can understand the fruit. If you just look at the fruit and don't pay attention to the root, you'll never understand why your marriage is where it is. And I think that's reason to be hopeful, for real. Like you should be hopeful, like, oh, if this is the root of the problem, now understand the fruit of the problem. And there is hope for you. There literally is hope. That's the good news. If you find yourselves feeling alone, maybe both of you, maybe one of you, if you're on the verge of an affair, if your spouse is on the verge of an affair, if you've already committed the affair, if they've already committed the affair, here's the good news. I like to tell people I am a hope dealer. Yes, I am. The good news is you can recover. You can recover from the affair. You can recover from the loneliness. Yes, you can. You can absolutely recover from it. And I want to give you a framework to help you understand how you can recover. Now, listen, I'm not tripping. I know that the hurt is extraordinary and you might be too angry. You're like, listen, I'm turning this video off. I'm just too angry. I'm done. If you're done, I respect that. But I think if you're married, there was a reason why you were in love and you knew there was potential and you've seen the potential begin to manifest, but the loneliness got in the way. Let me give you a quick down and dirty framework that can help you. It's what I call the practice of awareness. Now, in my upcoming book called The Emotional Tsunami, I talk about how couples can begin to find solid ground after infidelity. And a part of finding that solid ground after infidelity is when you can begin to be more aware. Now, make sure you get a copy of this book. If you do nothing else, right? If you've committed the affair, or if your spouse has, or if you both have, or if you're thinking about it, you want a good resource that can help you understand what's going on. Even if you decide you're not going to stay together, you need a resource so you don't repeat what you've been through. So I want to invite you to get your copy of Emotional Tsunami so that you can begin to practice awareness. Let me give you what AWARE stands for. The A stands for all in emotionally. Being all in emotionally simply means you decide I got to invest fully emotionally. And when both of you do that, the sky is the limit. The W is for warmth. When warmth begins to fade from a marriage, like you've ever been around couples, like they're together, but there's no warmth, like they don't really love each other. They don't talk, they don't hug, they don't slap each other on the butt anymore. Like they don't laugh anymore. What's up with that? Like, where's the warmth? Somebody said, where is the love? Right? Where's the warmth? Listen, if you practice being warm toward one another, it infuses so much security in your marriage, in your relationship, that an affair becomes very difficult. Everybody wants somebody who's warm toward them. That's an emotional skill, the emotional skill called warmth. The next A is for emotional availability. It's being available. Remember that couple I said when the husband would start to tell his wife what he was dealing with, what his questions were, how his day was going, and she didn't have time. What she was saying is, I'm not available. I'm busy. I got stuff. What do you want? Get it out. I got to go. That lack of availability is what creates pain. But when there's availability, hold on, let me put this book down and tell me more about that. That's availability. So the first A is for being all in. The W is for warmth. The next A is for being emotionally available. The R is for being responsive. Like, respond. Hey, I'm generally with empathy. Like, Hey, I feel you on that. I respect that. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. Like, don't just stand there and look at. You ever had somebody just stand there? You're telling something important to you, and they're like, okay, anything else? Like, that's not responsive. Responsiveness says to the other person, hey, I see you. I'm here for you. I get that. I'm tracking. And then be engaged. To be engaged emotionally simply says, well, tell me more about that. Like, what was that like? Oh my goodness. Are you serious? Wow. Thank you for sharing that with me. Hey, I'm tracking with you. Like, just be engaged. The opposite of engagement can be dismissal. And let me tell you, dismissiveness is destructive. We'll talk about that in another video. And how you can move forward is by practicing being aware, emotionally aware, all in, warm, available, responsive, and engaged. Hey, it's been great to be with you. Like, subscribe if you want more of this kind of content. And by the way, there will be more, because this is the first in the series that I'll be doing on infidelity and how you can recover, recover whether you've been through it 20 years ago or 6 weeks ago. I'm going to help you see how you can begin to recover. So stay tuned. There'll be more. Part 2 is coming up.